I'm Scott McGhehey, you're watching Stretty News TV.
Hi, it's Jonathan Shrager here for Stretty News TV. I'm joined today by Manchester United alumnus Andy Ritchie at Manchester's recently developed media hub, Media City. Thanks for taking the time to chat today, Andy. How are we doing?
Pleasure. Yeah, I'm good. Just finished Red Wednesday in the BBC studios, so I'm okay.
Good stuff. I just thought we'd chat a little bit about your playing career at Old Trafford, if that's okay. So obviously, I mean, your career at Old Trafford spanned from 1977 to 1980.
Yeah.
And it was it's an interesting period in United's history, because obviously nowadays, with the media scrutiny and everything, people seem to know a lot more about the club, but I suppose at the same time, you know, there's not as much access to the club. Through Andy Mitten's book United in the 70s, we gain a great insight into Manchester United. And I just wanted to ask you about your time there. What can you kind of reveal about the club, and what were your overriding memories of being at Old Trafford?
Well, 1977, you say. I was there from 75. I was signed as a schoolboy, straight from school. So, right. So I went through the youth system as it was then, which is obviously not like it is now.
Yeah.
There was no academy. It was you came out of school and you were signed on as a schoolboy at 15, and then you became an apprentice at 16.
Yeah.
And then I became a professional at 17. Normally you would become a professional at 18, yeah. But clubs were allowed to sign whoever they thought or deemed to be good enough at 17 would get a professional deal, and I was lucky enough to do that. Yeah. So I came straight out of school, straight into the youth system as it was, and played in the A and the B teams, which was the Lancashire League, and we used to play against the likes of Southport and teams like that with grown men in. Yeah. And I think it was a fantastic grounding. You know, you used to get kicked from pillar to post.
Yeah.
But it made you a player. It made you a man very, very quickly.
Yeah. And obviously you're a Lancashire lad, aren't you? Born and
raised. Well, I was born in Manchester.
Right.
Just not far from Bellevue.
Right.
And my mum and dad moved. I think I was probably about 3 months old when we moved, but then we went to Wythenshawe, and a little village on the outskirts of Manchester, and I was there till probably about 7-year-old, and then we moved over to Cheadle, and right. So I played a lot of my football on a Sunday because I went to a grammar school.
Right, okay, but obviously then born and raised in Manchester. Yes, yeah. And you know, did you have a sort of partiality towards the red or the blue side of Manchester?
I was always a United fan.
Right.
But unfortunately, the people I went to school with were all City fans.
Right.
All my classmates and lads that I knew were City fans. And my mother wouldn't let me go to a football game on my own. Yeah. So she said, no, you've got to go. If you want to watch football, you're going to have to go with somebody. So I had to go with my mates who were City fans, and I had to go down to Main Road to watch football.
Right.
Which was, I just wanted to go and see football live.
Yeah.
So I used to go with them, and used to stand in the Kippax stand with all them, and the team at that time was, you know, the likes of Rodney Marsh and people like that, and really, you know, I used to love watching Rodney Marsh play.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be at Old Trafford watching George Best. Well, Bestie was not probably there then, but you know, I just wanted to be over there. But I had to take my footballing hints from the blue side at the time. But when Manchester United came in for me to sign on schoolboy forms, there wasn't any contest.
Okay, so when you attended those games, were you sort of secretly willing City to lose? Was the rivalry as intense back then as it is now?
It was always intense, and that has always been the game for me. I know it's changed in recent years with obviously with the title races and the titles being won, you know, between ourselves and Liverpool, and I know Sir Alex always thought that was the game, you know, the biggest rivalry, but it was always the derby for me.
Yeah.
And I know it's coming back into more importance. But I wouldn't say that I was secretly wanting them to lose, because I think I'd have got some stick off my mates as well, and they might have said, right, well, you're not coming anymore, you know, you can't come with us, and then I'd have lost out completely. But I did see United play there, and obviously I wanted United to win when they were there. But it was strange having to do that. But certainly I wanted United to win the league at the time, and it's always been the big game for me.
Yeah, and then sort of just touching upon the sort of managers that you played under at Old Trafford. So presumably then, obviously when you came to the club as a schoolboy, Tommy Docherty was the manager, and then obviously he moved on when you started playing for the first team.
Yeah.
And Dave Sexton succeeded him. So, I mean, what were your kind of abiding memories of playing under both those managers?
Well, Tommy wasn't there that long, to be honest, but he was the one who I went to see when I signed as schoolboy. Norman Scholes and Gordon Clayton were the youth scouts, and I remember them taking us down to Old Trafford to meet Tommy, and then, you know, getting presented to him, and he's going to be, you know, he's going to sign him on as schoolboy. And my dad was with me, and all I can remember is going down to that place and being so nervous about it. But at the time, I think Alex Stepney had was it a testimonial where they played, I think they played something like Real Madrid or somebody at home. I can't just remember who it was. It was a big game. Yeah. And I didn't realise this, and I didn't get to know until quite some time after that he was going to actually let me have part of that game at 16.
Wow.
And I was not told till a long time after, but Frank Blunstone, who was my youth team coach and probably has the biggest influence on my career, he sort of guarded him against it, and I think that he was thinking that it could have done me more damage than good at the time. Yeah. But I always remember getting the phone call from Tommy, and he said, "Listen, we've got this game. We'd like you to come down as my guest. Bring your father, whoever you want. You've got a box in the cantilever stand for the game." And it was, you know, it was a bit of a shock. Yeah. But I think that was in compensation for not being able to, you know, maybe take part in some of the game. Right. And looking back, it might have been the wrong thing. It might have given me a bit of an overblown opinion of myself. I don't know, but I wouldn't have thought that, because, you know, I'm not that type of lad. But if I'd have gone on and I hadn't done well, it might have damaged me. I don't know, but certainly everything else worked out after that, really.
Okay, so you never actually played a first team game under Tommy Docherty. No. But obviously you played the majority under Dave Sexton. Yeah. What were your kind of memories of both managers then, just when you think back to them?
Tommy, you know, being around the place and very ebullient, very vocal, along with his assistant, which was Tommy Kavanagh. The two of them were, you know, larger than life characters. You knew that they were about, you could hear them, they were always, you know, centre of what was going on. Dave being very, very different, a big thinker, a tactician, somebody that thought about the game very, very deeply. Yeah. And my overriding memory was that the two of them, Tommy Cav and him, was so polar opposites. Yeah. It was strange to see them actually together. Yeah. But it did work to a certain extent. You know, Dave would be that tactician and take a lot of really tactical sessions with you, and then Cav would sort of pull us after that and say, "Right, come on, let's have a five-a-side," and we'd all get out and have a. He used to call it a raz, and we'd have a raz and you know, a five-a-side at the end, and Cav would be involved in it.
Right, okay. So did you ever implement any of the tactical stuff into the five-a-sides?
Yeah, I think we did. I mean, there was quite a few things that Dave tried to get in. I remember we'd gone over to Split to play in Europe, and he took us to a basketball game the night before, or 2 nights before the game. Yeah. And then had a training session the next morning and tried to sort of implement the D defence round the D and round the box. And I don't think it worked too well with Gordon McQueen and Martin Buchan and people like that. I think it got shouted down a little bit. But yeah, I do remember quite a lot of the tactical sessions that he did were very, very good and very interesting.
Yeah, and do you remember, obviously, so you're at the club originally, you probably thought you were going to play under Tommy Docherty. Do you remember how you felt when he was dismissed? Were you disappointed you never had the chance to play under him?
A little bit, but obviously, it's been well documented what went on, and I think there was only one outcome, that Tommy had to leave the club. And I would have liked to have played under him, and I've liked to have been in the dressing room when he was in full flow. I think I got a little bit of a taster of it from Cav, because he was the same. He used to come in and he'd tell you what was what. Certainly used to get on my back quite a lot as one of the youngsters. I used to seem to cop it all the time, but he did pull me one morning after training, and we'd finished a RAS at the end of training, and he called me over to him, and he had his arms on my shoulders, and he said to me, he said, "You think I'm alright? Beep, you can edit that out." And I said to him, I said, no I don't, inwardly thinking, yes I do, because I'm always on at you, I'm always having a go at you. And he said, the time to worry is when I don't shout at you. He said, because then I've given up on you. Now, again, expletive, get yourself in there in the dressing room. And it hit me like a lightning bolt that in his way, and that way, he was trying to make me a better player. And he hadn't given up on me. He thought I had potential. And it changed my perception of what he was trying to do, if you like, because I did think sometimes, God, he's on at me again, he's on me back again. But he was trying to make me a better player.
And I was going to say, what's your? I mean, I've seen certain Reds describe it as a surprise when you left for Brighton. Was there a specific incident that prompted you to move, or was it you were discontent with something? Or because I have seen Reds say it was a surprise that you left the club.
Well, the manager had let me speak to Aston Villa, Newcastle and Chelsea. So as I say, I took the hint after that. And when Brighton came in, I hadn't fancied going to the other three teams, but I thought maybe in the fourth time writing was on the wall a little bit. And I went down, and Alan Muller was in charge, and I thought, I like this fella. I like the way he spoke about the club down there. It was a very friendly club, very homely when I went down. Virtually within that short space of time, which was virtually a day, I knew everybody around there. It was wanting to get to the heights, and it was a little bit of a triangular situation, because I moved from Manchester United and went down to Brighton. Peter Ward, who was at Brighton, moved to Nottingham Forest, and Gary Birtles came to Manchester United. So if one of us hadn't have wanted to go, I think the triangle would have fallen down. But it didn't, and I moved down there. I didn't want to go particularly, but I thought, if I'm to be a better player, I had to get first team football and regular first team football.
And I mean, obviously you played at the club with some United greats, Martin Buchan, Lou Macari, etc., to name but a few. So who were the kind of players that you recall when you look back, that the best players that you played with, that you shared the pitch with? Well,
you've already mentioned three there. I mean, I was Martin Buchan's apprentice at the time, so I had to clean his boots, and he was very particular about how his boots were cleaned. And there was many a time that I was last out of the boot room and last to get home, because I had to take them back 3 or 4 times because they weren't up to his standard. But it taught me a grounding, and it taught me that I wanted to aspire to where they were, i.e. in the first team dressing room at the Cliff, where that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in there with them. I wanted to be training with them. But I played with so many good players there. Ray Wilkins, who I would say is one of the best players I've ever played with. Joe Jordan and people like that came in. Stevie Coppell, who was a great mentor for me, helped me so much when I came into the side. But they were all brilliant. Martin was excellent with me when I first got into the first team. He showed me the ropes a little bit, helped me, but also I knew where I stood in the pecking order, and I had to get up to where they were by playing well and earning that respect. And there was I loved it, my time, and two of the players that I sort of based myself on and watched in training and trained with them and watched them in games was Stuart Pearson and Jimmy Greenough. And I mean, Jimmy and Stuart were just so good at what they did, the two of them. I think were very, very underrated players.
And the sort of handful of players that you cited there, would they all feature in sort of your United 11 that you played alongside?
Yes, definitely, most definitely. Yeah, it'd be very difficult to keep it to 11, I think. But of course, at that time there was only one sub as well, so it was sometimes difficult that you weren't getting on the bench. Now there's 6 and 7 on the bench, isn't there? But certainly those players would be in my top 11, definitely.
And so what I noticed when I speak to yourself, and I also interviewed Scott McGhehey a while ago, who actually sent me a text to pass on a message to you. But what I noticed is there was there's kind of, when you recall players, obviously there were a wealth of top-notch players. Was there a tangible frustration around the club at the time that there was this wealth of quality players, but the club still was sort of underachieving in a way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and Scott was the next sort of big thing after me. He came in, he was just the lad underneath me, and then it was then Norman Whiteside behind him. I remember seeing Norman there as a schoolboy and thinking, he looks a player, But I think there was that little bit of a feeling that we should be doing better. I think the season that Dave Sexton got the sack, I think they finished 7th in the league, but it was a late run. I think he had a late run at maybe winning 6 or 7 games towards the end of the season that pushed them up into that position. We hadn't played particularly well, and I think with the players that I've mentioned there and the additions that came in, i.e. the Gordon McQueens and the Joe Jordans, that maybe I think we did underachieve a little bit.
And of all the players, that you played with, who were the sort of your teammates that you were closest with, and maybe that the relationships have endured, that you're still in contact with now, maybe? Well,
I still do see Scott every now and again, Scott McGhehey, but I would say that Arthur Albiston, I see him in around the club because I work on match days, and Lou and people like that, Jimmy and Stuart Pearson. But one of my big mates was Ray Wilkins as well, because Ray came to the club while I was there. I was still living at home in Cheadle, and Ray moved to Bramhall. And me and my wife sort of took them around a little bit, showed them places that in and around the Bramhall area, and we became good friends, and I still keep in touch with him now. And he was another fantastic player, but what a great fella. He another one that had got a wealth of experience and passed what he could on to me as well.
And obviously you played, I think I looked up the statistic, because you were just literally before I was born, really, in terms of watching.
Thanks for that.
Didn't mean to throw that in there so casually, but and obviously you had 42 appearances and was it 13 goals? Something along those lines. Who was the kind of player on the field that you shared the rapport with the most? I mean, you mentioned Stuart Pearson and Jimmy Greenough. Who was the player that you played alongside the most up front or in attacking midfield, and that you shared a rapport with, would you say?
I think I'd probably, without looking back, I'd probably played, I would have said, probably with Jimmy more than Stuart and Joe. I was probably the one that came in when one of those three were injured. So, but I think without really looking back, I probably played more games with Jimmy, and then probably Stuart.
Right.
Maybe the least with Big Joe, because sort of Joe had come in, big transfer fee, 500,000, which was probably worth like 50-60 million now, back then. And I can only remember maybe a handful of games with Joe, maybe even less than that. I'm not sure, but those two they were there when I was as a schoolboy coming through and watching them. Jimmy and Panch were just like, it was just like watching the gods. You know, they were awesome. And I would say that as a player watching those two, they probably had the biggest influence on maybe how I played, I think.
Yeah, and a question regarding the kind of off-field culture around football clubs at the time, because obviously in the 80s it was very well documented that you had the kind of infamous drinking trio of Robbo, Norman Whiteside and Paul McGrath. I mean, obviously you played sort of a few years before that, sort of the late 70s, but was there that drinking culture? Did it exist in football even?
I think they still like to drink then, and they still like to drink when I was still playing at Oldham. You know, it was still around then. I think it was just how you took it, really, and how you took it to an extreme. But having said that, I think everybody was on a level playing field because everybody was doing it. You know, and you trained hard and you worked hard and you played hard. There was no doubting that we were extremely fit, but now it's gone to a different level, and a lot of the players don't drink at all. Some of them will only have a drink close season. There's one or two that still like a drink, but it's definitely not to the heights that maybe it was then.
Yeah, do you think even the more talented players back in decades past, could they have still performed at the level that players do now had they have been drinking that amount on a weekly basis? I
don't know. It'd be hard to judge. I think nowadays, I think that you've got to be careful of your body, and I always think that I wish I'd have had that culture that is now. I always think, would it have made me a better player? To have had the help not only in nutrition, but the fitness coaches, and they know all about your body, rehydration, the right foods to eat after games, before games. I mean, I think we got it right at times, but I often wonder, would it have enhanced the way I could have played? And I've got to say, probably it would have done.
I was going to ask you, are you? I mean, is there any particular sort of amusing anecdotes that you're at liberty to divulge from your time at United? That can go on camera with your teammates? Because Scott McGhehey was telling me we actually filmed an interview, and he was telling me one anecdote about the time they'd been in Paddy Crowron's pub in Altrincham, and the amount of pints of Guinness that were consumed that night. But I just wondered if there's any amusing anecdotes from.
There is one that is actually I can repeat.
Is it one that you've told before?
Well, I have, but it was actually when Dave was there, and we had finished training. And Dave then wanted to try this new free kick out, and this actually happened, and I was actually there that day, and we set up that it was down the right hand side. Jimmy Nicholl was involved, Ashley Grimes was involved, and Stevie Coppell over the ball. And one made this run over it, knocked it into him, bum, 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 get the ball in, score the goal. So there's me, Gordon McQueen, Panchan, Jimmy Greenoff, and Martin Buchan and people like that. So we're all swapping round so that we all know where we are and what our positions are. Should I be on the pitch? Should Panch be on the pitch? Should Joe be on the pitch?
Yeah.
And this went on for probably 20-25 minutes, and we hadn't scored a goal. So Dave said, right, come on in, right, finish now. And there was balls coming in, and they were hitting the back of the behind the goal and the wall behind the goal, which is the gym down at the cliff. And he brought us all in, we were all stood round him, and he just said to us, he said, right, he said, anybody got any questions? And Big Gordon said, yeah, Gaffer, he says, why don't we just do that one where Stevie crosses it in and I score? And he didn't say it quite like that, but everybody just fell about, you know, and everybody apart from Dave, to be fair. And with that, he sort of just twaddled in, and we sort of got ourselves back in and had our showers. But
right. So probably not a routine you actually executed on the pitch then.
No, there was. I mean, there was another one which brought it. Came back to me only the other week when I was doing the co-coms for MUTV for the game up at Newcastle. Yeah. And Pardew had still got his touchline ban, but he was allowed in the stand. And I don't know if you remember seeing the pictures of him on the phone.
No.
And he was picking up, but it was an actual phone that he was picking up.
Right.
And talking to John Carver down on the bottom, which is normally, it's a little earpiece, talks into the little mic and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, it just brought an incident straight back to me again when Dave was there, obviously. Yeah. And he had a phone put in the dugout at Old Trafford, which was down the side, and he sat up in the stand. So I think it was pretty innovative at the time, but it was one of these big old, you've seen the ones where you used to have to do that with the put your finger in the thing. It was a big white one, and it was sat by the side of the thing, and I happened to be the first day it was in there on the Saturday. I happened to be sub, and so Laurie Brown, Tommy Cav and me are sat on the bench. That was it then. So 5 minutes into the game, the phone rings. Cav picks it up. Yeah, right. Gets up, barks some instructions out. This keeps going on every 5 minutes, and I could see steam starting to come out of Cav's ears. And yeah. Anyway, went on all the way through the first half. He's probably up 15 times. It probably run about 15 times, and he was getting more and more irate, Cav. Second half starts. After about the third ring, he picked the phone up and went like that and shoved it in the water bucket. Well, me and Laurie are like trying not to laugh, and the damn thing rang again while it was in the bucket of water. And the next thing, he pulled the cord out. Well, I had to get up. I was off. I had to go and I did an impromptu warm up because he had gradually got so irate at this. Anyway, we never saw it in the dugout again.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. I suppose, yeah, just a couple more. I mean, obviously, you occasionally do work for MUTV, so you're still in and around the club, and you're privy to some of the inner workings, I'm sure. Obviously, when you played for the club, it was a bit of a sleeping giant in some senses, and now it's this sort of global branding juggernaut. Yeah. Is it just completely unrecognisable from when you were there in your playing days?
It is a little bit. In terms of the offices and the people that work there, it's just gone from maybe 20 or 30 people, being in the offices. You could walk straight into the ticket office, which was in the main ground, and you knew everybody. To now, it's just incomprehensible, isn't it? How many people work there? I don't even know how many. Yeah. I mean, I feel so privileged it's still, every time I go in and I do the games on a match day and I work for MUTV, I get a buzz. It's absolutely fantastic. But it's changed so much. It was always, you know, if not the biggest club in the world then, and it still is now, but it has changed. It's incomprehensible, and you trying to get round the inside of the club now has changed so much. You used to be able to walk virtually round the ground underneath. Now you can't. You have to go up and here and there, and the corridors that are around the ground, that has changed quite a bit. And it took me a bit of a while to know which way to go, because I've obviously working one of the lounges. So then getting to go to somewhere else, to maybe go to see another sponsor, I'm saying, well, you better come with me and just show me for the first, sort of season I was there. But it has changed a hell of a lot.
Right. And obviously, just a parting question really, you left United several years before obviously the advent of Sir Alex Ferguson. When you look back, do you think, I'd love to, if several years later, I'd love to have played under Fergie? Oh,
definitely. I mean, I think I'd have loved to have played under Ron Atkinson as well before Fergie, and gone all the way through that. But I think to have been there in Sir Alex's reign and to be part of that, because he's the most successful manager in the world, and I think he's the best manager in the world that's ever been. And to be part of that, and to have taken his ethos on board and what he wanted, and to have been part of it and worked so hard for it, because that's what Manchester United is built on, is hard work. That's the basis of it. You've got to have good players, but the basis is being hard work and running for each other and working for each other. And he instilled that, and he got that into the place, and that ethos will be there for a long time to come.
And then I was just thinking, actually, a few people, when I mentioned this to the blog on Twitter that would be potentially interviewing you today, got a few people tweeting in questions for you, so just quick fire ones if you want. So at James Lindemann asked, he said, mention to Andy that my LUFC, so presumably Leeds United, pal John Rawson, who knows him well, confirmed that Andy is loved by Leeds United and United fans, but this isn't the case with Gordon McQueen and Joe Jordan. Ask him his opinion on this.
Yeah, it's strange. I think maybe because when I went to Leeds, I was very lucky that first season I was top scorer, which always makes it easier for you to be taken to the hearts, endears you a little bit. And I think that the relationship between Leeds and Manchester United has changed over the years because of them when they got up into the Premiership. But there's been a hell of a lot that have made that transition, have played for both clubs. Either starting at United or starting at Leeds. And it was quite a while after I had left Manchester United that I went to Leeds, so I think that wasn't as fresh in their minds, and then it's worked out quite well. I think I'm quite lucky in that.
And then sort of a similar theme really, at Razor74 says, why Leeds? 3 question marks.
You go where you wanted at the time, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, because I had some great years at Leeds, but you've just that was it. I had to leave Brighton because things weren't working out, and Eddie Gray, who I admired as a player, was the player manager at the time, and again he sold me the Leeds United ethos at the club. There was a lot of young, good talent there. Tommy Wright, who I played at Oldham with, John Sheridan, who I actually, I signed for at Oldham when I was manager there. There was some great players mingled in with a lot of experienced players. Peter Barnes being one, there's another one that played for both clubs. So as a footballer, you have to go where you wanted, and Leeds. I had some good years at Leeds, but I think that gap made it easier transition for me being a Manchester United player.
Okay. And then at Shades Harris asks, what was your best memory in a red shirt?
Oh God, my debut for a start off, which was at Goodison. Excuse me. It was over Christmas period, and we won 6-2, and we weren't particularly doing well that season. I think we were probably third or fourth from bottom when we went there, and they were second, I think, in the league. Right. So we weren't expected to win. Didn't manage to get on the score sheet. Got kicked in the head by Roger Kenyon. Can remember that. And then I played another 3 games over the Christmas period, and then didn't manage to get my first goal till a year after, which was at Derby County. Always remember that. And my 2 hat tricks, one against Leeds and one against Tottenham. Those, they'll be with me for forever. And very, very lucky to score 2 hat tricks for Manchester United.
Did you get to keep the match balls?
I've got them. Well, my mum's got them actually. They're in her. Well, they're not in her loft. They're in an up and over in her cabinet at home. And my other ones are my other ones are at home. So I managed to get 7 hat tricks in my career. So I was very lucky to do that.
Fantastic. And then Scott McGhehey, who we mentioned before, he texted me and said, I played with Andy a few games for the reserves and at Oldham. Ask him, does he still have that shell suit I sold him? And then he ends with, he was a top player and a good lad.
He did sell me a tracksuit as well. Yeah. It was that was when they were all the rage, and shell suits. Yeah, you'd get absolutely hammered if you wore one of them now, wouldn't you? But no, funnily enough, he was involved in one of the biggest goals for Oldham. Yeah. That I scored, which was down at Southampton when we were going to well, it was in the Littlewoods Cup, and Scott had come on as sub, and the ball was flicked on to him, and he knocked it out to Rick Holden, who then put the ball in, and I managed to get on the end of it, and it got us a draw down at Southampton, and we come back and we beat them at Boundary Park. Yeah. And he's a good lad. He's a bandit golfer as well, by the way.
Right.
Not played golf with him for a while, so if he's looking in, tell him to get in touch and get us a game at Whitefield.
Right, will do. And then finally, at Johnny B 007 asks, a bit more serious this one, are players such powerful commodities to clubs nowadays that a manager's job has become a bit more impossible, sort of post Sir Alex Ferguson?
I really do think that it's a totally different game in terms of management now. I think you have to change your style. I mean, I've never had to manage Premiership players anyway, but I think it's such a difficult thing to do to balance, and we've talked about egos on the programme tonight and having that respect. I think you've got more of that comes into it now, and it is a difficult job, especially at the top. You've got to be able to at any level. You've got to be a diplomat. You've got to be able to sort things out in your head. You've got to be a good man manager. But I think at the top level, it's really difficult with the money that's involved, and the wages. I think you've got to have a real knack at how to handle people. Yeah.
And actually, just one more did tweet in at B1G Bones. He says, when Andy played against United, did he commit himself as much as against other teams?
Probably more. I know you see all this now that people they don't show any emotion when they scored. I scored 2 goals against Man United after Dave Sexton, and I was punching the air and everything, and it wasn't against the club. Yeah, it was against Dave Sexton, and you shouldn't have let me go. That was why. I probably tried harder than maybe I would against anybody else.
Yeah.
Because my pride had been hurt. I wanted to show him that I should have been still at this football club, and I should have been scoring the goal in the opposite end for Manchester United.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how I would go about it now. Whether I would be a little bit more restrained if I managed to notch against the Reds, but we'll never know.
Right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Andy.
Thanks
Really
very much.
enjoyed your
I've enjoyed
time, and thank you very much.
Pleasure, John.
Cheers.